I want to pose these very interesting aviation-related events to Hoover of the Pilot Debrief channel. You can comment if you want. No, you don't have to if you want. I'm just putting one out there. But none of the, I think one of these has a FAA or NTSB report, but the rest of them don't. They're either too weird or they predate the FAA. But they're Amelia Earhart, D.B. Cooper, Wrong Way Corrigan, and the ghost of 401 or 411. The fifth one, I don't know if I remember or not. I may post that later. But okay, let's okay, the 401. I think it's Eastern 401. That back sometime in the 70s, the flight crew was trying to figure out, why they didn't have a landing, why the indicators on one landing gear turned out to be just a burned out bulb. But before they figured it out, they ended up crashing in the swamp. And some of the passengers, I think all the flight crew was killed, but they reused, some of the gear. They reused the radio on another flight. They don't do that today because of liability problems, but they reused the radio. And one aircraft that one stewardess she knew the pilot, or she knew the flight engineer. They had seen both of them on different flights, and it scared her pretty good. They removed the radio, and the ghost quit showing up. Okay, Wrong Way Corrigan. Right after Lindbergh did his thing back, what was it, the 20 to 30s? I don't know, whenever Charles Lindbergh, did his flight. This guy Corrigan. He was gonna. He'd flown his plane to New York. He's gonna take off and do the same thing. And I think it was a CAA, civilian aircraft. I don't know, something. It predated the FAA, but they told him, they said, look, you don't have the flight, you don't have the pilot skills to do this. Your plane can't possibly make it. So the guys, they said, we're going to decertify you and decertify the plane. So he said, okay, I'm going to fly back to California, bone up on my pilot skills, get some mechanics to work on my plane, and I'll try it again later. So anyway, he takes off, and I don't know, like 15, 18 hours, whatever it was. He ended up in Ireland, and they said, they asked him, they said, hey, look, we thought you didn't make it. We thought he was going to head for California. He goes, well, I must have went the wrong way. It's a very famous story. You can find it out there. Anyway, okay, D.B. Cooper. I think everybody knows that story, but I'll tell it anyway. Back in the 70s, this guy hijacks his plane. He used an alias of Dan Cooper. He hijacks the plane. He disappears forever. Nobody really knows what happened to him. Personally, there was a guy named McCoy. I remember Bob McCoy or something like that. But he did the same thing about McCoy had hijacked the plane, but he ended up getting caught later. He successfully parachuted out of the plane, but they figured out who he was. They caught him, and he was put in a federal prison. And he escaped with some other people. He ended up dying in a shootout. The FBI had asked him, they said, hey, are you D.B. Cooper? And he refused to answer him. So it's out there. That story's on YouTube. But he looks like this guy, this McCoy guy looks like the composite drawing done by the stewardess of the flight. So I'm thinking I think a lot of people think it's this guy McCoy, but I may be wrong on that. They said the guy's dead. It's probably lost to history. But anyway, that's D.B. Cooper. Now, Amelia Earhart, I think most people know that story. I gave a little bit of the backstory for anybody that doesn't, anybody that's been living under that rock for the past 100 years. But on the late 30s, she's going to do this, female. But she wasn't alone. She had another guy with her. But this guy was a bit of a drunk, and I'm not sure if he was all that well or not. But anyway, she disappears to history. Now, there's people that claim, well, she had a specific radio frequency she was assigned to. I think the FAA or the FCC had given her a specific, shortwave radio frequency. It's around 6 megahertz, somewhere in there. But now there was supposedly, radio amateur ham radio operator in San Francisco that heard her broadcast calling her call sign on her frequency. They assigned a frequency that no one else was supposed to be using it, except her or people communicating with her. And a radio amateur claimed that he had it's on the internet, you can find it, but he had claimed that he had heard her maybe 2 or 3 days after she's supposed to run out of fuel, and supposedly she'd crashed on one of the islands out there. She's on the wrong island or something. Now there's some stories that she was spying on the Japanese for President Roosevelt, that she'd flown over some islands she wasn't supposed to be on. The Japanese had took custody of her and her navigator. But and they both died in Japanese custody, and the Japanese just didn't want to admit that that just happened. Those stories are out there. You can find